Well, everyone, I'm back, and I was trying to figure out what video to make tonight in reaction to the Xbox showcase. Because, of course, I did the general reaction to the showcase, but I was like, what segments would we normally pull from like a stream if we were talking about this? And of course, the answer is Starfield. This is mainly because I've seen a couple of people on like X and Twitter and places discussing this absence, and I just want to address it because the obvious like elephant in the room is that Starfield seems to have been like at least maybe not abandoned but like dropped in the priority list pretty significantly. In this tweet from Juice he said, my take on the lack of Starfield at the Xbox showcase is the next big update and the DLC, maybe, will coincide with the PS5 release, which they didn't want to put on a big stage at the Xbox showcase. I don't think it's dead. Personally, I could be wrong, parentheses. And I mean, this is kind of where we're at, okay? Like, what Starfield previously said, or Bethesda said about Starfield, was that they were going to have multiple. They said, we're going to have annual expansions, plural, for Starfield, akin to Shattered Space. So what we had last year as a dedicated expansion, maybe not that long, if you remember the last one, but nonetheless expansions. And that has pretty much, like, they've gone radio silent. There's really no updates. They also said they were going to be doing all sorts of new added content. They're going to be doing things like, more paid mods. They were going to do new quest lines. They were going to do all sorts of stuff. And it's pretty much gone radio silent since Shattered Space. And frankly, like, in reaction to Shattered Space, them choosing to walk away from it or at least drop it in the priority list significantly, I can't say I blame them. Like, the reaction to Shattered Space was very, very negative. It just was. Like, I know some fanboys came at me when I was dropping my review because I accidentally finished it early. I thought it was like when I got to the ending after like 5 hours or whatever it was, 4 hours, 5 hours. I thought I had accidentally triggered a secret ending or something, but no, that was just the ending and that was it. And I thought I was doing something wrong, but no, that's just how short it is if you just do like the story stuff. If you find other ways to like do 100% completion, there's maybe 10 hours of content. Some people said they got to 15. I have no idea how you can get to 15, but nonetheless, some people claimed it. But if you look up Starfield Shattered Space on Metacritic, I'm looking at it right now, it's a 62 from critics and a 4.9 out of 10 from users. And only 157 user reviews. So it's not like this thing is getting like review bombed by bots or anything. It's just people who played it genuinely didn't think it was very good. And I don't blame them. Like, it was really frustrating to see that after a year, all Bethesda could gin up for Starfield was like 5 hours of content that was basically just more Starfield and lacked any sort of creative spin. It was just, oh, now there's sort of anti-gravity bubbles. You can float in those. And there is the rover that came in a previous update before the expansion, but there's nothing in the expansion that uses the rover. There's no like races, there's no specific quest lines that use it. It's just not really implemented. It's just a separate thing. And realistically, I mean, I think it's very probable that they looked at it. I'm guessing Shattered Space didn't exactly sell very well. And I'm also guessing that the poor reaction and reception was not very exciting. And the lack of improvement in player count when they dropped the expansion also, I think, is a factor here. And as a result, I think it's just like, why focus so much on it when players just clearly are not interested? Whether they are capable of making an expansion that brings players back or not, at some point, it's just not worth the risk or the investment when you've got something that players want, which is Elder Scrolls 6. So there are kind of two possibilities. As Juice kind of alludes, maybe they just are going to bring it to PS5 and they're going to do the expansion announcement at the same time. They'll drop it in some random X post on a Tuesday afternoon or a Friday afternoon when everybody's about to leave the office and go home for the weekend, hoping it just kind of slips under the Xbox like fanboy chat rooms and whatever, and they can just drop it that way and move on. Maybe that's what they do. And honestly, if they're going to reveal a new Starfield DLC expansion and a PS5 port, I think that's the most likely way to do it. It always was surprising to me to think that they were going to, at the Xbox showcase, announce that, like, hey, that big game from a couple years back, yeah, now it's going to the other guys. Like, it just always felt like a weird place to announce that. So maybe they do just drop it as an update randomly. And then maybe like a 20-second trailer for the expansion that they have. And they're going to then move on to like the final update. And they'll announce the PlayStation 5 version as a complete edition, which, let's be real, is what they'll do. And it'll cost $80 because we know they're doing that now. And maybe that's just how it goes. If I had put money on it, it's kind of what I'm expecting, is that they're going to announce the PlayStation 5 port of the game as the complete edition. It launches at full price at $80. It's going, maybe if we're lucky, they'll do like 60 or 70, but I'm guessing full price at 80. It'll come with both expansions on the disc day one, and they'll launch the expansion at the same time for Game Pass subs. And it'll launch in like September somewhere, and they're not going to really bother marketing it because they don't expect it to do any real numbers, and they'll just kind of move on from it. That's kind of what I'm expecting them to do, which is probably the best route at this point. But the total lack of any communication on it is really, really bizarre. And it's just, it's such a, I think it's indicative of more broadly Starfield's just lack of ability to connect with people. There's also this post from Mickey D on Twitter as well. He just says Starfield fans are on absolute life support. And it's just a post on their subreddit where somebody said, I had so much hope for today's Xbox show, but no. And then beneath that, you see Bethesda, I don't want to play with you anymore, the Andy dropping Woody meme. And it's just Starfield. And honestly, I can't say that I blame them. Like, again, the player counts are just not there. The mod support is not there. I can't blame them for wanting to just move on and do something else. I mean, can you? Can you? If you were asked with, like, spend the next year or two of your life working on content to update a game people have kind of moved on from and thought was pretty mid, and try to get them excited enough to come back, like, it's just not happening. And at some point, it just doesn't make sense to put all that time, money, and effort into something that doesn't click. The one way I think it could have happened is if Pete Hines were still in position. Pete Hines was the former like head of marketing at Bethesda Game Studios. He got promoted within Bethesda Softworks into a position of lead marketing through like the Fallout 76 era and Starfield era. And then he retired right after Starfield came out. But what was notable about him is that he was talking very openly about how he believed, like his personal philosophy was that a game that is launched and is not feature complete, is not ready for prime time, but launches for one reason or another, that should eventually be fixed. Like they said, we will get every game we put out. If it's not ready, like if it's not exactly what our fans want, we will build it until it is there. Which, I mean, you can obviously say it should have been that way from the start, but at the very least, I can respect it. And I think that that's why we have Fallout 76 to this day, is because he refused to let it die. He was like, we're going to keep working on it until it's what people want. And they did that. But you notice, like, in a matter of weeks, I don't remember the exact time frame, but it was a matter of weeks after Pete Hines retired. And we know that that was his philosophy. But just a matter of weeks after he retired, they shut down Redfall. Even though they were allegedly trying to fix it with updates, taking it offline, doing all sorts of stuff. After he left, there was apparently no more like defense against shutting these projects down when they fail. So they just shut that down. And I think maybe a similar thing might have happened here, where they might have looked at it and just been like, we've got a good chunk of an expansion. Let's just wrap it up, get it as, tidied up as we can. We're just going to put it out quietly, move on from Starfield. Maybe we'll take a whack at a sequel in a decade and a half or 2 decades or whatever it is for them. And then we go from there. I mean, honestly, it's probably the best route. Starfield, I think, was a cool idea and concept, but I think it was also a game that was built for wow factor. It was built around a couple of whiteboard ideas, is what I'd call them. They're ideas that when you're designing a game or a movie or even a YouTube video, and you write an idea on a whiteboard, and it looks really impressive when you see it there. But when you actually follow it through, maybe you should abandon it. But they never got to that point with Starfield. Like, you can tell that at one point Todd wrote 1,000 planets on a whiteboard. He's like, I want to make a game where it feels like there's 1,000 planets, or even there are 1,000 planets to explore. And he just keeps pointing at that. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. And at some point they should have realized that's maybe not that fun though. Like, players like our games for custom created environments with hand-placed, points of interest and, tailored exploration. That's why people like our games. This is like the opposite of our games. You're taking the thing we're good at and you're doing the literal opposite with procedural generation. They should have pivoted away from that initial whiteboard idea, but instead that's the entire game. That's all of Starfield. And everything kind of suffers as a result. Where it's like, hey, our engine, it's like, I want people to be able to fly, from this planet and go to their spaceship and fly to another planet and then go explore that planet. And there's 1,000 of those. And at some point they should have said, well, our engine can't do that. Our engine can't handle seamless transitions like that. Okay, well, we'll just throw a load screen in. Well, our engine also can't handle you going into the spaceship seamlessly within the environment. So we've got to have a load screen there. Okay, whatever. And at some point, they should have paused and be like, wait, we have how many? We have 6 load screens between you getting from point A to point B. What are we doing? No, let's do something else. Like, they should have come up with some solution, but instead they just continued with that initial whiteboard idea. And that's why I think Starfield ultimately failed to connect with people, is because game design inherently is very iterative. It's filled with people throwing out an idea, you work with it, you expand it, you investigate it, and then maybe you choose, it's just not clicking, it's just not working, and you cut it, you scrap it, you rework it, whatever, and you try something else. But it felt like Starfield was a game that had very little of that. It felt like Starfield was a game that was just all initial ideas with very little refinement. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I think there is a world and a universe in which Starfield ended up connecting with a lot of people and being really, really good. But I mean, obviously at this point, how few people talk about it, the fact that everybody is at this point just hoping that Bethesda announces the next thing, that's not great. Or like when I did the polls after Starfield launched, and we did the poll right as it launched, and it was something like, 1/3 of players or 60% of players or something were excited for the next Bethesda game. And then I asked people like a month later after they had finished Starfield, specifically if you have played Starfield, are you now more or less excited for the Elder Scrolls 6? And only like 3% of the 70,000 people that responded to that poll were more excited. And that alone is the nail in the coffin for Starfield. Like, any game should get you more excited for the next one to come from the developer. You play Phantom Liberty as an expansion, and that should get you more excited for what's coming next from Cyberpunk, or from CDPR rather, in Cyberpunk or The Witcher or what have you. And it's a similar thing with like every studio. You play Ragnarok, that should get you more excited for whatever Santa Monica Studios' next game is. Or you play Baldur's Gate 3, you're excited for what Larian does next. But in the case of Starfield, it actually did the opposite, and it made people lose confidence in them. And it's just too bad. It's too bad. But I mean, this is just what happens when the game is not what gamers wanted. And they didn't listen to feedback, at least not in time, to actually make changes. And any changes they have made, it seems like are too few and far between, and too late at this point. So it looks like the story of Starfield is coming to an end. I personally don't think that they're just abandoning it. I don't think we'll get a tweet which is just Bethesda saying, we made the difficult decision to end development on the second expansion. Like, I don't think they'll do that. I wouldn't blame them if they did, but like, I don't think they'll do that. My guess is we will see it eventually on the PS5 as well, and then they'll move on. And the expansion will be an hour and a half long. It'll be tiny. Maybe they don't even charge for it. I don't know. But I think that they will move on. Like, all this to say, I don't think we get a third expansion. I think that Starfield's story is almost over, and it's just a matter of time before it wraps up. So that's that. But let me know what you think in the comments. Am I alone in thinking it was weird that it just was not present? It feels weird. It feels weird to me, but I don't know. Let me know. Until next time, my friends, much love, hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.